So now we can talk about nominal versus real GDP. And so nominal GDP is going to be, total aggregate output calculated using current prices. So nominal is GDP calculated using current prices. So in this sense, it's not corrected for inflation. So changes in nominal GDP could be, changes due to both quantity and the price of those goods changing. So it's not clear which is driving it, but both of those things we could have the same amount of quantity, but if the prices of the goods went up by a certain percentage, then we'd see the nominal GDP go up by a certain percentage. Now, real GDP, on the other hand, is GDP calculated using constant prices. By constant prices, I mean prices from a base year. So we pick a base year, and we'd use that to calculate GDP. So in that sense, it's kind of corrected for inflation. So real GDP is only going to change when the underlying quantities change. If the prices change, but the quantities remain the same, then real GDP wouldn't change. All right, so let's think about let me maybe erase this, and we'll do a really quick example of how you calculate nominal GDP, real GDP, and these growth rates, and we can kind of see the big difference that we get when we don't account for inflation. All right, so example, it's just real versus nominal. So just showing really stylized example of how you calculate each of real and nominal GDP, and then we'll calculate growth rate, so percentage changes, and you can see the big difference we get when we use constant prices versus current prices. So let's just imagine a really simple economy. And again, let's just say there's, just like last module when we did CPI, there's just pizza and lattes in this economy. That's all we have. And let's say we have 3 years, 2011, 2012, and 2013. And we have pizza, we have lattes, and we have prices and quantities of each of them. Maybe I'll make this just a bit bigger. So 2011. So prices and quantities, price and quantities for each of these years, for each of these goods. 2013. So let's say the price in 2010 for a pizza was $10, then it goes up to $11 in 2012 and $12 in 2013. And let's say the economy in total produces 400 pizzas in 2011, 500 in 2012, and then 600 in 2013. The price of lattes, let's say, is $2 in 2011, goes up to $2.50 in 2012, and then $3 in 2013. And let's say our economy produces 1,000 lattes, I should say, in 2011, and then goes up by 100 every year. All right, so we have prices and quantities, and these are like the only two goods produced in the economy. Otherwise, we need to have lots of different columns here. So let's first think about how we calculate nominal GDP for this really simple economy. So for 2011, it's just current prices times current quantities. So 10 times 400 plus $2 times 1,000. So 10 times 400 is $1 plus $2 times 1,000. Put that into our calculator or phone, we get 6,000. 2012, again, current prices, so $11 times 500 plus 250 times 1100. 11 times 500 plus 250 times 1100. And that equals 8250. And then 2013, again, $12 times 600 plus $3 times 1200. And that gives a total of 10,800. So if I wanted to calculate the growth rate of nominal GDP, we'd just calculate the percentage change, right? So let's do between 2011 and 2012, it would be 8250 minus 6,000 over 6,000. We'd multiply that by 100 if we wanted a percentage, and we'd see that the nominal GDP went up by 37.5% between those 2 years. Now let's, on the other side of it, look at real GDP. And let's use 2011 as our base year. So what that means is we use 2011 prices for all the years, but the quantities in each given year. So nominal and real GDP are going to be the same in the base year, right? So in 2011, if we're using 2011 as the base year, it's just going to be $10 times 400 again, plus $2 times 1,000 equals 6,000. But now let's go on to 2012. We're using 2011 base year, so it's price of pizza in 2011 is $10 times the quantity in 2012, which is 500. So we're saying $10 times 500 plus $2, the prices are going to remain constant, times 1,100. And that gives us 7,200. And 2013, again, the price is in the base year, so $10, the quantity is 600 now. Plus $2 was the price in 2011 for a latte, times 1,200. And that would give us a nominal GDP in 2013 of 8,400. My calculations are right. So then if we want to calculate the same growth rate, again, between 2011 and 2012, we'd get 7,200 minus 6,000 over 6,000 times 100 if we wanted to express it as a percent. And now we get, I think, 20%. So look at the difference in the growth of GDP depending on if we use real or nominal GDP. So real GDP is only going to change when the underlying quantities change, because the prices are remaining constant, because we're always using prices from our base year. In nominal GDP, it's changing from year to year because both the quantities produced are changing, but also the prices are changing. So the GDP deflator, is what we're going to talk about next. And what this is, it's kind of a measure of the price level. So it's going to be a measure of overall prices, overall price levels. And it's defined as, the GDP deflator is going to be nominal over real GDP. I guess I should write GDP there. We'll multiply it by 100 as well. This is kind of looking similar to that CPI stuff that we were calculating last module. So take the nominal GDP, divide it by the real, times it by 100. This gives our GDP deflator. And we're going to be able to calculate inflation, and we'll get different calculation of inflation, maybe one that's better for the economy as a whole. Remember, the CPI concentrated on consumers. The deflator is about the overall price level of the economy. So it's going to more closely capture the overall price levels, where CPI is more angled at consumers. So we can use this, GDP deflator to calculate inflation. So we can calculate it by looking at the percentage increase in the deflator, basically. So let's see what I mean. So let's go back to that example that we were just looking at. We had year, nominal GDP, real GDP, and then our deflator is going to be over here. All right, so we had 3 years, 2011, 2012, and 2013. So we learned how to calculate nominal and real GDP. So I'm just going to fill it out. Just remember, 6,000 was our base year. So nominal and real were equal to each equal to 6,000. The nominal in 2012 was 8,250, while the real was 7,200. And in 2013, the nominal was 10,800 and 8,400 in terms of real GDP in 2013. So to calculate the deflator, we're just nominal over real times 1,000. Well, nominal over real times, 100. 6,000 over 6,000 is 1 times 100 is 100. 8,250 over 7,200 times 100 is going to be 114.6. And then 10,800 divided by 8,400 is 128.6, if my calculations were correct. So I'm just putting these numbers in this formula right here. Nominal over real times 100. And then we could calculate the percentage change in this deflator to calculate inflation. And this is going to be more representative of the economy as a whole, like I was saying, rather than consumers, which was the CPI was mostly picking that up. So for example, if we wanted to calculate the inflation between 2011 and 2012, we want to calculate the percentage change in this deflator between 2011 and 2012. So that would be 114.6 minus 100, just a percentage change formula, over 100. Multiply it by 100 if we want to get a nice percentage, and we'd get 14.6. Those cancel out, so 14.6%. So using this method of calculating inflation, the inflation rate was 14.6% between 2011 and 2012. So that's just using a deflator instead of the CPI like we learned about last week.